Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Home Care Hot Seat. Today I'm chatting to Ben Ashton, the founder and managing director of Good Oaks Home Care, which recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary. He'll be talking to me about how he started his career as a frontline care professional and has now grown his own business from a small startup into a network of 14 offices across the UK. So, welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to start by talking about your anniversary because you celebrated 10 years in the home care sector last year after launching in Poole in 2011. So how have you marked the occasion?
Well, we were actually so busy. It was very low key, really. We'd had a big get together in the summer with the whole franchise network. So yeah, to mark the 10 years, there were some awards and recognitions, a little event locally, and a bonus little video message from Eddie the Eagle, who had spoken at an event in the summer, which was a bit of a surprise, but very kind of him.
So what inspired you and your business partner, Darius Mitkus, to launch the new home care business then?
Yeah, so we actually met working as home carers. We both really stumbled into the sector, and the company that we were working for was a really good example of how not to run a care company, really.
Okay.
So it was there. We saw lots of really amazing caring people just not able to do the job properly because they weren't properly supported or valued by the company they were working for, really. So yeah, we looked around and we saw a real need for a premium quality care provider. And I guess our experience taught us that the key to providing that is to attract and retain the most caring professional people and really just to support them to do the best job that they can do, because they're the people going into people's front doors every day and making such amazing difference. So yeah, I guess a lot of franchisors and care entrepreneurs generally come at it from the other way, where they often organise care for a loved one and they sort of see what the end product is like and think maybe that was not quite how they would like things done. And I guess our experience was the opposite, in that we saw some of the factors that were at play to sort of lead to those sort of outcomes. I mean, yeah, I was very young at the time. I was only 22 when I started Good Oaks, but
yeah,
it's fair to say that there was a little bit of, you don't know what you don't know when you're starting something like that, and it's a little bit more complicated than we initially thought. And it's very regulated, and you're responsible for what you and your team are doing, but maybe coming into the sector without those sort of preconceived ideas of this is how it's done maybe has helped in some ways, I'd say.
Do you think that if you were a bit older and you knew more about the regulations and all the challenges and everything else, you wouldn't have got into it, maybe?
It was a very steep learning curve, that's for sure. Would I have gone into? I think, yeah, I think we would have. Well, actually, we did look into actually buying a franchise right at the start of the process when we planned to set up, because we were aware that there was lots of regulations and red tape. I think we didn't quite realise the scale of the work that was needed to get something set up, really.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, about being tempted into going with a franchise, because you obviously got a model to follow, a business model to follow, but you had to go up with your own business model.
Absolutely,
so that must have been really challenging.
It was, and yeah, we definitely looked in and inquired to a national franchise. I won't say which one, but basically we didn't have the capital required, unfortunately, to franchise. Yeah, and that meant we ended up doing everything ourselves. So policies, procedures, care plans, risk assessments, websites, contracts, you name it. So very busy first X number of months, really. I think in our first year, we turned over the princely sum of about £5,000 because we were so busy doing all this other stuff. And if you compare that to our franchise partners, generally the average year one revenue of £200,000, you can definitely see the difference that franchising makes, in that it allows those entrepreneurs to focus on the productive parts of the business, the growth-oriented activities, really. Yeah.
So as home carers, did you start off, when you started Good Oaks Home Care, did you do a lot of the caring yourself to begin with?
We did, yes. Yeah. So Good Oaks started just me and Darius and our care manager that we work with. And yeah, a lot of the hands-on care ourselves. We started with 0 carers and you know, we were doing that for a little while we grew the team really. So yeah, it was good to you know, obviously we're meeting all the clients face to face and really understanding what they were needing. It was very helpful.
You mustn't have had a break at all.
No, it was about, there was a period, it was about 6 months without any days off, including weekends, right at the start, where you're just sort of just getting through that period. And I think every business goes through that really busy period, and then hopefully by the end of that, it's still really busy, but you can sort of be a bit more flexible with when and how you work, if that makes sense. So you don't have that luxury when you first start, unfortunately, but that's what you're aiming towards, I guess. Yeah.
That's really admirable, because you know, you don't, a lot of people, they don't see social care as a career, and you've really demonstrated that you've, you know, started as a home carer and you've started your own business and it's really successful now. So hopefully people will see that. And did you kind of put that story across when you're recruiting then? About
Absolutely, yeah,
you know, your story.
definitely. There's just so much opportunity in the home care sector. You know, it's just such a growing in demand sector that it's sort of whatever you want it to be, really, in terms of a career. There are so many amazing people that just love caring for people, and that's what they want to do. And there are some people who want to start their own businesses, some who want to progress into management and director roles. But yeah, it's really it's really interesting. And I think having the background that me and Darius has given a lot of empathy into how hard that role is to start with. You know, I think it is really challenging role to be a carer. Is no one does it for an easy life, that's for sure. But obviously just so rewarding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you start franchising then? And was it always your intention to do franchising?
We started thinking about it around 2016 or so. We ran a couple of pilots to sort of prove that our model of premium care was replicable in other areas. They then sort of converted to full franchises the following year, and we sort of went from there. It wasn't always in our mind, because obviously we were looking to buy into a franchise at the start. So obviously we obviously always like the model. I think what works really well is that model of local sort of owner-led care, because often we found that could be a bit more responsive and agile than bigger, more corporate providers potentially. And as we grew, we didn't want to sort of dilute our ethos with sort of those big structures, you know, behind it all, really. So for us, franchising offers sort of the best of both worlds, really. You got the proven systems and processes that all we know work, but there's also that sort of dynamism of the local owner who's really sort of going the extra mile for their community.
Okay. You now have a national presence with 14 branches in the UK, 7 of which opened last year. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So why was last year such a strong year of growth for you?
Good question. I'd be lying if I said we saw it coming. It was, a really very busy year. I think it's obviously the pandemic has been obviously really challenging, like personally and professionally for everyone. But I think one of the unforeseen effects that it had was, I don't know if you've seen this, the Great Resignation, they call it, or the Great Reshuffle, where people are sort of spending some time rethinking about like how and what they do and where and why they work, I guess. So yeah, we've seen care managers and other professionals come to us saying, why am I doing this for someone else when, I can do things how I know I want them done, and I can build something of my own. I think our track record really helped as well. So I think about 12 months into the pandemic, all of our offices were busier and helping more people than they were before the pandemic, which sort of shows how resilient our model is and the sector is as a whole, definitely. And I think a lot of people do have that itch to start their own business, and this did sort of kickstart that, I guess.
Okay. How have you seen the home care market evolve then since you started back in 2011?
Good question. I think more and more, and this is accelerating, but I think carers' pay and conditions are improving a lot and have improved a lot, I think, since even in the 10 years that we've been going. I think pay rates locally have almost doubled, really, which is fantastic for those carers, because they're still way undervalued by society as a whole. And, you know, back then contracted hours weren't really a thing. You know, there's lots of 0-hour contracts, and that's also changing, which I think is really good. And we've always talked about professionalizing the home care sector, which I think did have a bit of a hangover from the sort of home help kind of world. But I think people are now seeing that home care is a really highly skilled workforce, that you need to have so many interpersonal skills and a lot of resilience and a lot of soft skills that are so important, really. I think how it's evolved, or how it hasn't evolved, probably is the publicly funded rates that that local authorities are paying. That was an issue a while ago, and it's still an issue that they're generally, I wouldn't say they're conducive to quality care, really. And I think that's been a pretty stubborn problem that's still got in the sector, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess it just depends where you are in the country, but yeah, a lot of the...
Yes, there are absolutely lots of local authorities that are excellent, but there are some that the rates don't really make sense if you're providing you know, if you're trying to attract and retain the best people. It makes it really difficult.
Yeah, okay. And talking about attracting staff, recruitment and retention is obviously the biggest challenge facing the sector right now. How has your business been impacted by the workforce crisis?
Yeah, recruitment is definitely something we all spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about. And I guess it's fair to say that it is that side of the coin that is the barrier to growth rather than the demand for our services, which is definitely there. I think in terms of our network, our franchise partners spend a lot of time personally, you know, working on their recruitment pipeline and getting involved in that, which definitely gives results when it's sort of coupled with our system and brand and everything. But that's definitely time and resources that isn't being spent elsewhere in the business. You know, so luckily, I guess our model has always been about putting the people first, and so basically our decision making around how to be that go-to provider, really. So we're in a sort of good position from that point of view, that we haven't had to completely change how we do things. It's just keeping that really sharp and continually sort of evolving that and improving it, really.
Yeah. In 2020, you actually wrote a column for us talking about the surge of new applicants during the pandemic due to obviously other sectors locking down. Were you surprised by the turn of events after the pandemic? Well, not after the pandemic, but, you know, in the months following. Yeah,
absolutely. I think if anyone predicted exactly what was going to happen in those, you know, in the last 2 years, that would have been very impressive. I think it was definitely a bit of a surprise. I think since then it's been a bit of a mixed picture, really. Some people have gone back to what they were doing before, definitely. So, you know, we had some, you know, one person who joined us was a manager at the local Odeon cinema, and she just loves the movies. So she's gone back to the Odeon now it's open, which is cool. But there are also some people that did come into home care during furlough or you know, all that uncertainty, or just from a desire to help, really. I think there was a big thing around that as well. And they've just absolutely thrived, and they found a career for life. You know, like what we were saying earlier, that there are so many possibilities and options in the care sector, really. So one of our carers joined us from a supermarket, and 9 months later, she was a finalist in our local Proud to Care Awards. And she said that joining the care sector was the best thing that she's ever done, which is fantastic. So yeah, it was. I think mixed is the right word, in that some people stayed and loved it, and some people did eventually go back to what they were doing before, really.
No, it's great that you've been able to keep some of those staff on.
Absolutely.
That really goes to show how rewarding the job is. With so much competition from other sectors right now, retail and hospitality in particular, how can providers like yourselves attract new staff and retain their existing ones?
I think for retention, I really think it's about supporting and developing the care teams. So like we said before, it is such a challenging job. When I was working as a carer, I was sometimes doing up to 1,000 miles a week around the local area, and I actually got little pressure sores on my heels from being in the car so long, and it was just really full on. And I think the important thing was that when you phoned the company with an issue or some advice, that there was someone there to help. So I think that support is just absolutely key, really. So from our point of view, that's regular proactive check-ins, it's meetings, recognitions, a robust messaging system so colleagues can sort of connect and support each other as well. It is really, really important. And I think the development is the other side of that, which is a clear career pathway. So a lot of care companies are very flat structure. They have a couple of people in the office and then lots of carers and not much interaction between the two. But for example, at Good Oaks, we have a system of team leaders where our frontline managers, if you are always recruited internally first, which provides that stepping stone, and then we upskill those people, and then often they then take the next step into coordination or a training role, or whichever sort of branch of home care interests them, really.
Okay, thank you. So what are your thoughts on the latest announcement that all COVID restrictions are ending, including the availability of free testing? And how do you see these affecting both the business and your staff?
Mixed emotions, really. I think a lot of people say they need to live with the virus. As a country, we need to live with the virus, but I don't think that means sort of pretending it's not there or just not acknowledging it or testing for it. The virus is still out there circulating, and it's still causing disease and deaths. Obviously, we currently have daily lateral flow tests that people have to do before their shift starts, and that's been I guess you could say, a logistical challenge is one way of putting it, to implement that and monitor that. And I think maybe there's something between that and completely ending free testing that might be a happy middle ground. But I do think that this change is, some people call it like a tax on caring. I think that is right, and that those people that are very conscientious and worried about spreading the virus, or maybe living with a vulnerable person, will be paying £5 a time. Not necessarily social care staff, because I think they will still get free testing when they're symptomatic. But there's something that doesn't quite feel quite right about it, I would say.
Yeah, and there's concern about ending restrictions. They think that maybe it'll create anxiety among older people whose mental health has been impacted by the pandemic anyway. So do you think that some people will be inclined to shield and become more isolated?
Yeah, I think they will. I do think that will happen. I think what's really difficult is, every restriction or intervention has a sort of cost and a benefit, really, which is why the low-hanging fruit, or the quick wins, are the first to get implemented and the last to get eased. And I think the availability of testing and, for example, masks are like two quick wins that do have an outsized benefit compared to the sort of financial and social cost, maybe. And I think restrictions do need to be eased at some point. I think the sort of sense of unease comes from the sense that these restrictions being eased might have been rushed through to distract people from, suitcases of wine being bought into number 10, rather than being based on a purely sort of evidence-based manner. I guess, yeah, my hope is that people do sort of modulate their behaviour, even though it's not mandated in law. Hopefully people will still be more cautious than they were before the pandemic, and there will be some protective effect from that, maybe, in terms of people still being mindful and taking that personal responsibility. But we will wait and see, I guess.
Okay. So I also wanted to talk to you about your commitment to cutting carbon emissions. Why was becoming carbon neutral so important to you and your business partner?
I guess, yeah, for me, it was having very young children and imagining the conversations I'll be having with them in 20 years' time about the world that they're inheriting. Was what really initially spurred me on to see what I could do and help others to do. Climate change is like the defining crisis of our time, and we're sort of slowly realizing that as a society. And I think, rationally, we should all be doing absolutely everything we can to care for the planet and to avoid or just even reduce the climate catastrophe that is coming around the corner. And home care has been really completely silent on carbon emissions and climate change, and I just that is completely so out of step with what's going on in the wider world, really, and the wider society. People are talking about it and people do care, and I think one of the reasons for that is that the sector is quite a carbon intensive activity, I guess, because it's lots of driving in towns, short journeys, start-stop, often in older vehicles. Maybe the engines don't always get warm and work as efficiently as they should. So our carbon neutral pledge has helped create 15 other carbon neutral businesses in the network, and provided 400 carbon neutral care jobs across the country, which is really important. And I think what's important is that this commitment comes from us as a franchisor. So doing the right thing doesn't cost any more to our franchise partners, and so it is a win-win, really. I think we first became carbon neutral maybe 3 years or so ago, and I think we thought we were just ahead of the curve on this, but it's been actually quite surprising that more home care businesses haven't followed suit yet. And I'm hoping 2022 will be the year that they do, because it'll be fantastic to get more of us in that space, really.
So how do you offset those carbon emissions as a home care business?
Absolutely. So our system provides really accurate travel data for every single journey that our carers do. So that data is there for us. We can also, we record every mile that we do for the other sort of activities, going out to do assessments or reviews. That's all collated, along with emissions from our offices and so on. We then work with an independent auditor who basically marks our homework and makes sure that everything's where it should be, and that we have covered all of our activities. And then that then gives us our carbon footprint in tons, and then we use that we then offset that basically with investments in green projects around the world, and also local tree planting as well. So and that helps with obviously clean the air and improve the environment locally. Offsetting isn't the answer to all of all the climate issues that we have, but I think it's a really good start. And I think as a sector, we do need to sort of wean ourselves off fossil fuels. So locally, our local care business, we're having some scoping works done to fit electric car chargers for our carers that they'll be able to use free of charge, as a bit of a pilot, really, to see for our other offices in the network, to sort of see how that works, and how we can sort of streamline that a bit.
Okay. When do you think that you'll be fully equipped with those electric cars?
Yeah, I think well, when there's enough semiconductors to make electric cars, it's really difficult to get your hands on them these days, I think. But yeah, the chargers should be installed in the next 3 months, I would say. And then, how long is a piece of string in terms of how long it takes to actually get the cars delivered, but I'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of your other plans, for 2022, what's in the pipeline? Do you plan to open more branches? Do you tend to expand in other areas around the country?
Yeah, that's right. We've got some exciting plans happening with the brand and our marketing capabilities, but can't tell you too much about that at the moment. So something that I can talk about is our something that we're launching in a couple of months' time is what we call the Good Oats Academy. So over the last couple of years, we've seen a real unmet need of care managers not getting the support or training or development that they need, really. I think on average, a manager gets about 1 day of training a year on average, which I think is crazy considering how important those people are to the success of the company and as a sector as a whole, really. So often when people come to join us, we talk to them about their previous training. So something that we are launching is the Good Oats Academy. There's sort of 2 parts to that. There's the sort of public-facing part for industry professionals, really. It's like a free resource for them to learn and develop their professional skills, improve their CV, evidence CPD, all of those sort of things. And it's sort of part of it is a way of helping to professionalize the sector, so people can get introduced to really important topics like managing change or assessing risk or building professional relationships or all those courses that we're putting on the system. Obviously, there's a lot more content for our colleagues in the network, but we also want to share best practice as widely as possible, really.
Yeah.
In answer to your question about new branches, yes, we've got some really fantastic franchise partners in the pipeline, actually, who are just sort of in the process of getting CQC registered, which is great, and it's going to be a busy X number of months of supporting them get up and running. And yeah, we've had some really good conversations about establishing more of a presence in other areas. So, for example, the north of the country, and we're definitely interested in developing our network in that part of the country over the next year or 2, and we're just sort of waiting for the right partner to do that, really. I actually had a really good inquiry from near Shrewsbury recently.
Okay.
It turned out I was just being mystery shopped by one of our competitors, but never mind. You never know. It was good fun, and you never know, he might come back to me one day.
You never know.
Exactly.
That's great about your training academy. So is it mainly for managers or is it frontline professionals as well?
Yeah, it's for a range, really. It's managers, aspiring managers, and also sort of related professionals, I would say. Yeah, it'll be quite a broad range in the end, I think.
Yeah. Do you find that one of the reasons that people leave is they're not getting that, they're not being trained enough and learning new things and getting new knowledge?
Absolutely. I think registered managers have such a difficult role in that they have all the responsibility, but not necessarily all of the control or the tools to actually take on that responsibility. So it's sort of partly because of that we want to sort of support that, really, because there are lots of registered managers leaving the sector because they're not getting that right support, really. So yeah, we're putting in place something that we hope will help a little bit.
So we talk a lot about challenges in this sector. What are some of the biggest opportunities emerging in the home care sector right now that we don't talk about so much?
Yeah, I think it's really good question, and I think great to inject a bit of positivity into the home care sector, because I think so much of the coverage that the sector gets in the press, is all for all the wrong reasons, really. The social care crisis, everyone keeps referring to it as, really. So I I think there are lots of opportunities, really. I think as a sector, obviously there's this underlying huge demographic change happening, which provides a massive baseline of growth for the home care sector. I think that's sort of underlying everything. There hopefully has been an increased understanding in government and in society generally about home care. And so I think there's definitely a bigger opportunity to get our voice heard in terms of what we do and how we do it, and the outcomes that we can have on our clients. I'm going to be optimistic and say the funding changes coming in to place in October 23, I think they start. That will eventually bring further investment if we can wrestle some of that back from the NHS. We'll see if that happens. But that'll bring more investment, and hopefully both public sector investment, but also other investment from entities that are now seeing home care as, you know, an exciting and like scalable place in which to operate, really. So I think that's all really positive. I think lastly, maybe technology is obviously a huge opportunity in terms of making things more efficient, automating any processes that can be, providing analytics, and really extending that length of time that a client is with a care provider. I think they're all really exciting opportunities. Yeah. So yeah, I think the future's looking rosy.
Okay, great. And finally, you've come so far as a business and as an entrepreneur as well, launching 10 years ago. As first you were a home carer, and now you've got a successful business of your own. How proud of you of your achievements, and also what advice would you give to frontline professionals starting in the sector who want to build a career like you have?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I haven't really taken much of much time to sort of look back and think about how it's all been over the last 10 years, but yeah, it's been an amazing journey, really. And I think but yeah, not one I've done on my own. You know, there's the co-founder and some amazing people that have been with us for a long period of that growth, really. I think in terms of the advice that I would give, that's a very good question. You know, I would say consider starting a franchise in the home care space, because it's so rewarding. And you know, I'm in touch with our franchise partners all the time, and there are definitely challenges, but there's definitely, you know, big rewards that can come from that sort of entrepreneurial home care space, really. And I think being really open and interested in the sector, and reading publications like yourselves, and just really immersing yourself in how it all fits together, I think is really important as well.